An examination of the 2021 Death by Bunjie hunting strategies continues. That is this vlog. We are looking at the Ridge Staging Foodplot. Doesn't that look great? It's all burned down. It looks pretty rough right now, but it was burned down last week. Genevieve and I carried in here about 10 gallons of water. I have a 6-gallon tank to refill with and a 4-gallon sprayer, backpack sprayer. Carried it in here, sprayed all of that with glyphosate, and got it all burned down good with the Roundups and all that good stuff, and it did its job. I was a little nervous about it because of all the rain we had, but in fact, it did not affect it. It actually did work and did its job. So I think we'll touch it up maybe next week. One backpack sprayer, don't need all the additional water. We'll come in here and do that. We'll fix it all up. Even the tall weeds at the bottom, they look pretty sick. They're a little hardier, but they're gonna die, right? They don't even know it yet, but they're on their way out. So by next weekend, we'll touch it up. If we get a dry day, I'll come in here and I will spray and get a touch up. Anything that's still green gets a spray. And then first week of August, second week of August, somewhere in there, one of those weekends, we'll come in here, we'll rake it all off, weed eat it, whatever, chew it up, rake it all off, plant our food plot seed, and go from there. What seed am I planting on this one? Ryegrass. Ooh. Half of you probably just unsubscribed. Anybody who's interested in food plots and food plottery knows that ryegrass is probably the least attractive of food plot seeds. I planted it over the years. It's in a lot of blends only because the stuff grows on a sidewalk. It grows in the shade, right? It's going to grow anywhere. But here's my thinking, okay? If you're feeding deer, if you're trying to improve nutritional availability in your area for your deer herd, you don't want ryegrass, right? But in October, I'm about 100 yards away from the 100-year-old apple tree up in there, that little clearing, okay? When all those apples dry up at the end of October, that's our attraction for October, suddenly the wood starts getting brown and the leaves start falling off the trees. You will see a lush carpet of green right here behind me. It won't be this yellow thing standing out in the middle of a green woods, no. It's going to be a green thing standing out in the middle of a brown woods. And that attracts deer. So if you're trying to improve nutritional health of deer, maybe ryegrass is not the seed for you. I totally get that. Stick with clover. You can't go wrong. It's the first thing to green up in the spring. It's the last thing to die up in the winter. They'll eat the roots clear through January. Clover is awesome. Grows in almost any condition. It's just a great, great crop. I love clover. But that's not what I'm going for. That doesn't fit in with my plan here this year. I just want a late October, first half of November, attractive food source. And then maybe, if I'm unlucky until then, we come back in the second crossbow season, the Pennsylvania rifle season, in December or whatever, and it'll still be green and attracting deer. Or maybe the late season if I still have a tag. So that's part of the hunting strategy for this location. Last year, shot the biggest buck I've ever shot in Pennsylvania. Right there, he was standing by one of those stumps running through here. He was booking. I had a little doe fawn down here, a little doe down at the bottom of the food plot eating. I'd seen a younger buck come through here earlier in the day. The buck shows up and he's over there wandering through and he smells that doe and he comes running over here, and she went down behind me all the way down there over the bank, and he was going to follow her. And he took off after her, and that was his fatal mistake. I grunted really loud, stopped him right here. Go watch that video. What a great video, and I had such a great hunt. I was sitting in that blind in just about that location, and that's a good setup. Now, I talked way too much probably in the last video. You guys are like, yeah, that was a long one. The 100-year-old apple trees, I'm showing you these hunting strategies for this year, my plans for this year, here in the Kingdom of Bunjie. That blind, I moved back a little bit. We're now at 35 yards. We're pretty much as far away from that apple tree as we can get. I have pushed that blind all the way back, up against the creek, the ditch, on the edge of the field. So pretty much as far away as we can get. And the reason for that is to make the deer more comfortable. This blind is still 20 yards from the mock scrape right down there, the mock scrape that we put in, right? And I had a picture of that buck I shot last year at that mock scrape. So mock scrapes are an attraction for deer. Don't forget about those. We'll talk more about those in future videos. If I want to put another mock scrape on the other side of this, I can also have a 30-yard shot over there. I don't think I need that though. When you have a really good attraction, the tendency is to make this food plot bigger. And I actually talked to you guys about that once. I was gonna I'm gonna walk out in here a little bit, take the chances with the rain. Man, we got rain in Pennsylvania, so watch, it'll dry up when I go to plant the seed. We'll never get another drop of rain. If I had seed in the ground now, it'd be a foot tall. Right there's my mock scrape on that young maple over there. Done a lot of videos on that. But when you have a really good attraction, like a mock scrape or like a food plot, the temptation is, well, it's such a great attraction, let's have 2 or 3 of them, right? Let's put in 2 or 3 mock scrapes. I don't want to do that. I want all the deer that come through here that are looking for a good scrape to use that scrape, right? Not a different scrape. I want them to come through here and use that one because that one is 20 yards from my blind. So I want them to use that mock scrape. Same thing with the food plot. The temptation was, and I talked to you guys about this, I was going to take trees out. In fact, I was going to take out that maple that I have the mock scrape in. And I remember asking that question once, I think it was on our Facebook page. I'm like, should I leave the tree or get rid of the tree to provide more sunlight and more room for plants within this little food plot? And the consensus was, no, leave the scrape tree there and use a scrape on it. And man, was that the right decision. This food plot does not need to be bigger, okay? Think of this as a legal corn pile. That's what this is. This food plot is here only to give me a shot at deer. This place is an attractive place for deer, right? But I want to concentrate them right here in front of me, 20 yards from my blind, 30 yards from my blind, or what have you. So it's important to me to make that attractive area smaller, not larger. If I had 2 acres here, it doesn't do him any good to have a deer clear out over there feeding to his heart's content. I want him over here in front of me. So I want a smaller food plot. My ambush strategy for 2021, an ever-evolving strategy, right, as they should be. But really, I'm looking for small, attractive food plots. So this one and one other one that we're putting in this year will be very small. In fact, I want them as small as I can get them. Here's the rule of thumb, okay? I want it to be as small as possible, just big enough that the deer will not wipe it out before I hunt there. They can wipe it out after, I don't care. But I want it to be as small as possible, but big enough that it'll survive deer pressure until I get a chance to hunt it. So that's what this will provide. I'm confident that this little food plot will do that. Now, I don't think we see it out in here. The rain is stopping just a little bit, and I don't see where it is, but I put 100 pounds of pelletized lime on this little plot. I didn't do a soil sample, soil test or anything, and I don't need to. Why? Because I know that this soil is crappy. I already know that. I don't need to take time, energy, money to find out that I need to add lime to this. It's a food plot in the woods. The pH on this is going to be 4 something probably, or maybe 5 something. So I put 100 pounds of pelletized lime on here, which should kick in. I did that once in May or June. We put in the first 50, and the second 50 sat right over here under a tree, and then we took it out last week and put it on here. So that should be working throughout the growing season. I don't need to raise the pH of this food plot long term. I don't care what the pH is next year necessarily. I just need to raise it during August and maybe part of September. That's all I need to do. So whatever boost I can give it, it will appreciate. So I'll put this seed down in the next few weeks, and it can grow throughout August, first part of September. And ryegrass, like I said, it'll grow on a sidewalk. It'll grow with that lower pH, no problem. And I'm hopeful that it will be a lush green food plot by the time the season rolls around. It was last year. Why wouldn't it be this year? Of course it will be. In fact, I put more lime on it this year. That lime will break up the soil a little bit better, maybe help the seeds get down in there good if they need that kind of help. It'll also make the plants perhaps taste a little bit better and provide for a better overall food plot. So that's the hunting strategy as far as the Ridge Staging Foodplot is concerned. Now, I keep getting off on a tangent here, but when I talked about moving the blinds back, see, this blind's at 20 yards, right? And the temptation is to say, well, geez, that blind's at 20 yards. That's awful close. You just move the other one back to 35. Is this one going to be too close? I don't think so. I think we'll be okay. Here is my mock scrape, right over here on that tree. And It actually looks like it's, I don't know if it's been worked or not, but there ain't much of a branch left. We're going to replace branches as a future project here. But if you look, that blind is set back in there, and there are trees between me and that blind. So there will be trees between the deer and the blind. This blind location does not seem to bother deer. The big buck was okay running through here. He was booking, so he didn't particularly want to walk out here in the open, walk through this food plot, but he nonetheless did. So be it. The other thing I would say is that those branches and trees and all that stuff break up that horizontal eye, the big black eye. The branches here and there. If you're standing here, there's a little branch in front of it, right? And if I were to walk, you know, down a little bit without hurting myself or stepping on a red spotted newt, don't want to do that either. Poor little guy. But if I'm standing here, you can see the blind up there, I think. Where is that? Right up in there. See, it covers it up nice, but it breaks it up a little bit. So there's trees, depending on where the deer are standing, there are trees between the blind and the deer. Now, I did a really good job, I think, of putting the lime on real heavy here in the upper end of the food plot. And so the food plot should get sweeter as the deer work up. I'm also going to fertilize it better up on this end. Now, why do I do that? That's because I want the deer on this end of the food plot, right? They come in from the bottom. Sometimes if they're coming out of the swamp, if they come off the neighbors, they'll come in this side. But they'll come up off the bottom, coming from the swamp. And you got to know the area, right, where your deer are and all that stuff, where their bedding areas are. But as they feed in here, they'll feed their way up through here, because this is where the real juicy stuff's going to be. The real good food is going to be on the upper end. And this will be 20 to 30 yards from the blind over there. So that is the Ridge Staging Foodplot. We're going to inventory what we need for this, but I think one more spray will do good. Then we come in here with hand tools. We're doing this all with hand tools. If you're wondering where the Ranger went, where the Ford 8N tractor went, where the New Holland tractor went, where all the sprayers and equipment and attachments went, you got to read my book, The Death by Bunjie Crossbow Story. The good news is, I can tell you, that for the time being, Genevieve and I have access to the kingdom of Bunjie. And I will enjoy that and appreciate it as long as we can maintain that access, right? And I hope you appreciate it too. So that's it for this little vlog. That is the hunting strategy, the hunting plan here for the Ridge Staging Foodplot. So it'll be our second ambush site that we've talked about. Genevieve and I have another one set up. Plans for, this is more of a late October, early November location, right? That's what I'm getting at here. We're focusing on the apple tree. We're focusing on the well-pad food plot in the early season, at the beginning. Then, as the rut comes by, we'll start using this location as well as the hemlocks. Ooh, the hemlocks. That's the most secluded of areas that we have, where bigger buck traffic, I think, you tend to see your bigger buck traffic down here. If we can set it up, but that's got its own challenges. We'll talk about that next. That's it. Until next time, all hail Bunjie.